this part of the garden center. She knows all the flowers. For anything that blooms or fruits, that's her. Michaela does the exact same thing for everything down in the store. So pretty much that's all her. So these two are my right hand people. I could not run the garden center without them. Been with me for years. Rio and Michaela are going to split it up. So we got tomatoes. We got to cover peppers, cucumbers, eggplants, all those the summer things. When do you do winter plantings? When do you use summer plantings? And then herbs. You are in herb country. We grow better herbs here than anywhere else in the country because they love bright light. They love the altitude. They like the dryness. You can grow fresh herbs better than anywhere else in the country. You don't have all the disease, the meltdowns, the problems that the South has or the Midwest has. Maybe California grows some good herbs. But you're all recovering from there anyway. You came over and now you're gardening here. You'll grow as well as you did there, maybe even better. So with that, why don't you give it up for Rio and Michaela?
Hi, everybody. My name is Rio. I manage the annuals, veggies, perennials, all that good stuff. So I'm here with probably most of you that have been here before know me. We're going to talk about, like I said, a lot of herbs, veggies. We're going over a lot of topics, as you can see. If anyone has questions, try to bring up your questions. Just raise your hand whenever we're on that topic. If you have stuff off topic, wait till we get there. Or we'll hang around after the end. So if you have questions around how to today. Bring them up at the end and we'll help you out. Even if the class is over, we're still going to come.
All right. I'm Michaela.
Hi, Michaela.
Said, I manage the lower main house. That's where we have a lot of our house plants, products, and things like that. I'm going to jump in and kind of start us off with soil prep and just going over how to get started, essentially. And the first thing first is creating a good foundation. So if you're starting in the ground, that's going to be putting in things like premium mulch. What's kind of different about this versus like the general term mulch is this is not big wood chips. This is a compost mix and small greens particles, which is going to help with your soil aeration, your water retention, and your nutrients. So it's kind of a three-part additive there. It really just sets you up for good stuff. Some other things that we're going to start with are like your humic acid. We've got that over here. This green bag, we're just going to pick that up for me. This is your soil activator. That's what's going to help you have healthy roots. And if you have healthy roots, you have healthy plants. These both we recommend for anything you're planting in the ground. And then for anything you're putting in raised beds or pots, you're going to start with your potting soil. Again, that's got your nutrients to start off with. It does have some perlite and other things in there for that aeration, for that loosened up soil in your raised bed. So it's kind of a two-part different thing when you're building your soils. And then when you are planning out your garden, if you know you're going to be doing tomatoes and peppers and squash and things like that, all of those things do need calcium. So if you want to set up your bed for those, you can add things like calcium nitrate. That's going to set your base, have it already in the soil, and just set you off to a good start with that. That will mitigate the risk of things like blossom and rot, which are super common in our area or just in any area in general that doesn't have calcium in the soil. I think, and then Aqua Boost. Aqua Boost is something we create here at Waters. It helps with soil regulation and regulates the water in the soil. So it helps with retaining water, but it also absorbs and slow releases. So you actually have to water less with this. It also has mycorrhizals, which are going to be very beneficial for your soil health as well. So that is going to be your foundation of your soil and things getting started. With those things, do you guys have any questions with your soil? Okay, cool. I'm gonna pass it off to Rio, and she's gonna start off with some tomatoes, and then we're gonna jump right into the rest of our veggies and roots.
All right, so with tomatoes, there are two main types of tomatoes. They can be lumped into two categories. There's determinate and indeterminate. Main way to remember those: determinate, those would determine size, and does it determine crops? So it put all the tomatoes all at once, one big batch. So that's going to be your stuff like your San Marzano, your Roma, your soft tomatoes. They're going to put off one large crop all at once. Then you harvest, make all your canned goods and stuff all at that time. Indeterminate tomatoes, what they're going to do, they're binding plants. So you want to trellis them. I have a chain link fence around my whole yard, so I just plop them in next to it and kind of weave through the chain link. But you want to make sure they have support. The indeterminate tomatoes too, they have kind of a producing through the season. So if you want something slicing tomato here and there, indeterminate is the way to go. Like Michaela was talking with calcium, if you are planting your tomatoes now, you don't really have time to let this sit in the soil. This has to go in for prep at this time. If you have tomatoes already in the ground, in your greenhouse, or growing them, you want to give it calcium now. So there's also a spray version. This is yield booster. It helps, like she was saying, end rot. You can kind of see the blackened ends of the tomatoes. If you've ever seen that, that's a lack of calcium. It also helps calcium in fruit trees, all kinds of other stuff, produce larger fruits. If there's not enough calcium, they get shriveled up, they're small, like why aren't they normal size? That's why.
The calcium nitrate you mentioned that you're planting now, but if we don't plant till May.
Yeah, if you're prepping your bed, you got a few weeks. Yeah, yeah. So the question was, if we're not planting now, we're waiting. Can you use this now? The answer is yes. This takes time to break down. It's granular, kind of cured in there. It's big little balls of calcium, essentially. So if you're still doing a soil prep, throw this in. If you already have your tomato in the ground, use a spray. The other product we've got here for tomatoes is a tomato and blossom set spray. I don't like the soil prep. I like to get out of gardener when I'm in the mood to garden. I do it now. So I use the spray on and off every week. Calcium and then your blossom set. Blossom set essentially is like hormones for tomato. You want to start doing this. You're basically telling it, produce fruit now. I want it now. Stop growing, because some people have tomatoes that are like, it's 7 feet tall, it's not putting on fruit. Why is it doing that? This will help that. Once you get it to the height you want, you start spraying, and you kind of biologically tell it, stop growing, give me some fruit. So those are two things to miss on and off weeks. Other important factors with your tomato growth, if you've ever had scarring, like lines down your tomato, it's from inconsistent watering and our intense heat here in the summers. So you want to make sure your moisture levels are regulated. You can do that with a couple different ways. Consistent watering when it needs. You can also add things to the soil. So she's talking about aqua boost. These are basically polymers. When they get wet, they expand in size. And as the soil dries out around it, it releases that water. So you don't have to water as often. The other thing you can do is bullet. This is a new product we brought in this year. It's essentially like a byproduct of the sheep shearing industry. So it's basically a little pelletized wool that do the same thing as our aqua boost, where they expand hold the water. And as the soil dries, it releases that water back in. So it helps regulate. It doesn't get really dry and the water is really wet, which the tomatoes have a hard time holding wet. Any questions on tomatoes? All right.
All right, I'm gonna jump back in. I want to talk about garlic, onion, and chives. Those are all great companion plants for your tomatoes, peppers, things like that. They are bug repellents. Basically, anything in that aluminum family is. They do want a little space, so make sure you give them about 4 inches around so that they can grow in size. Growing wiggle room. But that being said, 4 inches is not that much when you're talking about your big garden. So they're great. You don't need to put them all next to each other. If you've got a pepper plant here, you can put one over there. If you've got a tomato plant over here, So keep in mind that when you're companion planting, mixing and matching is great. There are a lot of benefits to doing that, especially when you have different depths and things like that. With your garlic and things like that, you actually have a couple seasons that you can do with that. You can either plant in early spring with those, or you can actually plant in the fall. So a lot of people don't realize that we actually have 3 garden seasons here, and that's spring, summer, and fall. We do carry these cool weather veggies again in the fall. So you have a second opportunity. If you miss it this time, you've got another opportunity later in the year. That's what's great about our area. We have such a long growing season. And these are, like I said, are all pest repellent as well. So they're another additive that just kind of helps in an organic way to help bugs from your other plants. And then Brianna's going to talk about some peppers.
Yes. So peppers, everybody's familiar. You get them all in the store. We've got them on a wide range of spicy level. So if anyone's familiar with the Scoville scale, it's basically how spicy is a pepper. We've got everything from bell peppers all the way up to, I think we might even get ghost peppers here this season pretty soon. We've got the mid-range too, so jalapenos and stuff like that. And then these two, you want to make sure, as you can see, you cage them or trellis them too. We've got multiple types. So the ones in the large pots come with a cage. We also have the wider circular ones that we're familiar with. And this year we're bringing in a new variety of tower like this. So there's different options, but you want to make sure it has a little bit of support. And with tomatoes and peppers too, you know those Mother's Day weekend, that's our historic Black Frost Day. There are ways you can plant tomatoes and peppers earlier. You have a greenhouse, you're going to bring it in time, but you can also do what I did in the video Ken was talking about. You can plant it in the ground if you're going to insulate it. These are basically called water balls, but they call it plant protector. Essentially what this is a blue cage that's around the plant. And you fill, it's all these little cells inside, and you fill with water. And through the water, it actually acts as an insulator. So as the temperature drops around the plant, the water kind of absorbs that temperature difference and keeps the plant inside insulated down to like 16 degrees. We've been hearing these for the last 2 years, and I was always skeptical, like that can't be true. You can't put a tomato in there and get snowed on and it'll live. So I planted it to see, and it got snowed on 3 times in the last few weeks. As we've all seen, it went from 80 degrees to snowing to 80 degrees again. But it did great in this. So if you want to plant, you can insulate it and let it live through those cold snaps we're inevitably going to get before Mother's Day.
All right, I'm going to jump back in and go over oregano and thyme, both great herbs. Why you would ever buy herbs from the grocery store if you can get them out of your backyard? Like, I mean, they taste great. Most herbs are either perennial or even some of them are evergreen. You do have some that are a little bit more windy, like your basil, that do need that warmer weather. But specifically for like oregano and thyme, those are very, very cold hardy. Will come through the winter quite well. And thyme, especially, it can be used in multiple ways. There's many, many, many different types of thyme and oregano. Everything from Cuban oregano to lemonade thyme. We're going to pass that one around. Smell that. It smells like country thyme lemonade. It's the most incredible thing I've ever smelled in my whole life. And yeah, so these can be used as a ground cover. They can be used as companion plants. Again, most herbs are animal resistant. Most of them are pretty drought tolerant. You don't need to water these absolutely every single day of your life. You can give it every other day or every third day, depending on how much sun they're getting. If they're in full sun, obviously things are going to need to be watered a little bit more often than if they're in a little bit of a shaded area. And then, put that one down. Yeah, with things like the thyme especially, you can even use that as a lawn replacement. It spreads out. Each one spreads about a foot out, so you get some coverage there. They're foot traffic tolerant even. So herbs have many uses, and they're just wonderful things. This one here is an Italian oregano, so goes great with those tomatoes and other things for your pasta, if you like that. So great things for cooking, and yeah, they are perennial, and some of them, like I said, will even be evergreen depending on your cold level, higher or low.
And with those times as ground covers too, some of them flower too. You'll see them in the back with pink flowers. Is there a question?
Yes, the oregano.
Yeah, yeah. Most herbs again are very great in containers. You can mix and match. Obviously, with your herbs, you do want to match them with light watering needs. They do great in pots. Depending on the pot, will affect on how much you water. If you've got a thick wall pot that's a little bit larger, you'll have to water less often. It's going to hang on to that water a little bit more. Whereas if you have real thin wall or terracotta, those are going to dry out faster. So, and again, where you're placing it, if you've got that in the heat of the afternoon sun, you are going to need to water more often because that's a scorcher. Whereas if you just got your morning sun, it's a little less often.
Another question.
Sure thing.
Do you prefer that terracotta pot or glaze?
I personally prefer glazed pots because they make it through the winter. Terracotta is going to break down a lot faster over time because it is porous, and you do have to water more often. I don't have to be watering every single day. I don't have time for that. So if I can conserve water, and if I don't have to water every single morning of my life, I'm going to do that. It just saves on water, it saves on time. And then I'm going to pass it back to Rita.
Okay, so if you guys are still waiting on your tomatoes, don't want to insulate, want to bring it in at night, maybe there are things you can plant now while we're going through full night still. Namely your leafy greens like lettuces, kales, spinach. These can get snowed on, and you can brush the snow off and they'll go through just fine. You do want to make sure if you do plan on doing lettuce or kales this year, you want to start now, or you want to do it in the fall. If you do it in the summer, they can bolt from the heat, especially if they're in full sun. What bolting means is the lettuce actually starts to expand in flowers, and once they start their flowering cycle, they're like, I'm done with flesh, I'm going to reproduce and die, I'm good, and it gets really big. So you want to make sure you do it while it's still full out, and dies, all the leafy stuff for yourself. And then here's kale, also great too. I will say, I used to hate kale. Stuff like this, I'm like, it tastes like beans, I don't like it. But I've recently fallen in love, I realized you can cook it. So if you throw this in a pan with some onions and potatoes and just fry it up a little bit, put it on a salad sandwich, it's very messy, but it's delicious. So give kale a try.
Going over back to a little bit what Rhea was talking about with your lettuces. Talking about companion planting. Lettuces are great companion plants because they have such a short root system. They're not competing with your other plants. So ideally with companion planting, you want something with deep roots, like carrots, root vegetables, things like that. These break up the soil and help those little tender roots from other plants get through their own with those deep roots. And then you want something tall that's going to shade your legs and make your lettuce last longer. Because those tall things can handle the full sun, whereas the lettuce, they like a little bit more shade. And then kind of going into that, some great companion plants with those are going to be your cilantro and your parsley. For those of you who don't have the gene that makes it taste like soap, you probably love cilantro. I personally hate it. It tastes like dish soap. It's disgusting. I don't know why anyone would eat it, but you don't have the gene, so that's why. So that's for people who do have that gene. That's where parsley comes in. It's kind of the opposite for us. We really like that. They're very similar in what they look like. So make sure you are checking your pots when you're picking those up. People all the time put them back in the wrong spot. And then if you're like me, parsley home and you're like, this dish though. That's no fun. So make sure you check your pots. We do have. Guys, I'm just blind. So this is your cilantro. Looks like parsley, doesn't it? Again, this is another great companion plant. They are bug repellent as well. So when you're mixing into your gardens, mix and match your plants, guys. They are going to be very helpful for repelling bugs because they complement each other. Oftentimes you'll have a plant like this that repels certain bugs, and then you'll have a plant like your rosemary that's going to repel different bugs. So if you pack your gardens with herbs, they're going to be a little bit more animal resistant because animals don't like your strong tasting herbs. Obviously with your tender things, they are going to go over some more of your tender stuff. But like your rosemaries and different things like that that are stronger, they're not going to go after that. So you're actually protecting your other plants by interplants. We don't have any parsley in yet, but we do have seed. So I did want to touch base on that. You're planting from seed. You want to be getting started now. With those, they are going to take a little bit longer to come up, and we are getting close to that 4 to 6 weeks before you're out. For the next 6 weeks is going to be super important if you're made from seed. And one of the things that we particularly want to do are carrots. Carrots don't like to be disturbed, so they will do best if you plant directly from seed. There's some great ones. It's a whole mix, and it looks that color. So lots of fun. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Rita.
And then I did want to pass some of these out too. So we made some pico de gallo recipe cards for everybody. These are for our tomato drop. If anyone pre-ordered our tomato bundle, you'll get some of these when they come in too. But I wanted to pass them around because a lot of things we're talking about today is on here. So if you get everything and plant it, now you have recipes for it too. I'll hand out some stacks if everybody wants to just kind of pass it around. Oh, yeah, I got you on time. Let's send you back. Now, all those get planted or passed around and think about plants. We're going to talk about beans and peas. This is your pea plant. These are viners and beans. Beans come in 2 types. So kind of like the determinate and indeterminate. There are bush and pole beans. This is a bush bean. It's a blue wave. I will say if you're planting right now, these are the one you're going to want to protect. Your peas will take the cold just fine. They'll take getting snowed on, cold nights, whatever. Beans need a little bit more protection. Beans will like crazy when it gets cold. So if you're waiting for your tomatoes and whatnot, I would wait for beans too. But peas, like snap peas, we've also got this is a purple mist grinding pea. I'm going to show the camera. I don't think anyone here can kind of see it. It's very little. But these put off purple, not string beans, but kind of long purple beans that are really, really good. These two, they want to be trellised. So you can put it on your peas, thank you. Your peas want to be trellised. So make sure you put them off your fence. Get a cage for them, something like that. Give them something to grip onto. So they can work on it.
All right. One thing I do want to mention when you're trellising things, you have a couple options for direction. That's actually important. When you're doing a trellis like in with your garden, I would either do it on the north side or the west if you're doing things that you handle with heat. You don't want to block that morning sun. So keep in mind where you're placing your trellises because as things grow up, they are going to be shading some of your other plants. So that is something to keep in mind. I personally did some raised beds, built the trellis up the back side, and so it kind of doubles for me, creating shade. And also, I use it as a dog fence, so my dog can't get out. I have raised beds about this high, a big trellis up here, keeps the deer out and stuff like that. So it's a whole bunch of raised beds. What I am going to jump into next are things like nasturtiums. Nasturtiums are another great companion plant. The entire plant is edible. They have a little bit of a spice to them, so you can add them to salads, things like that. It's another edible flower. This is often used as what you would call like a bait plant. They're very attractive to those aphids and things like that. So if you plant it just a little bit away from the things that you really want to save, they'll go after this over your lettuces and other things that you personally want to eat. Whereas this can be a little bit more ornamental, but save your other plants. So it's kind of a sacrifice plant in that respect, but it is beneficial in many ways. And like I said, it is completely edible. It is a little bit more tender, so you don't necessarily want to stick it in your freezing area. So keep that in mind when planting these things. Next plant I'm going to talk about is rosemary. This is my favorite plant. It is evergreen. It is industrial. Your deer are going to eat it. It puts off flowers. It can handle the cold. It likes to be pruned. I mean, what's not to like about this plant? It's absolutely fantastic. It is very drought tolerant. That's the number one reason people kill these, is they overwater them. So keeping that in mind when you are getting rosemary, there are many different types of rosemary. The two main ones that you'll notice, though, are upright and trailing. Trailing, like it says, is going to be creeping along the ground. That is a little bit more cold tempered, so just keep that in mind when you are picking your rosemary. This one's a Tuscan blue, but you'll see things like barbecue rosemary. That's actually kind of grown specifically for using like shish kebabs on the grill. It's got a little bit of a woodier stem, and you can put your other veggies on there when you're grilling out there grilling. So it's a great plant. If you've never smelled rosemary, smell some rosemary. I'm not going to pass this one around because it's kind of a big bucket, but it is fantastic. Goes great with garlic. Again, making pasta, potatoes. Let me tell you, potatoes, garlic, butter, best thing you're ever going to eat. And with that, I'm going to pass that to you.
Next, I was going to talk about the root veggies, kind of like carrots that Michaela was mentioning. These are anything that lives in ground, like the root veggies, your onions, beets, carrots, are going to be pretty cold hardy too. They got that insulation from the natural dirt. So anything you want to plant now, cold tolerant, again, leafy greens, root veggies. And then the other thing too with those is when you're planting them, if you get like a six pack kind of like these, you're going to want to separate them out. So this is an onion. There's about 4 in one cell. So when you're planting these, you want to make sure you separate them from each other. So you'll have 4 plants from this one section, and you have 4 from the others. If you plant beets and the larger variety of plants as that one cell and you just plop it in the ground, they will kind of crowd each other out. Think about how big an onion gets. They're going to want space to grow. So you want to put them about 6 inches apart for your larger varieties. Otherwise, they will start catching each other in the ground. You can kind of get rot and some other issues.
Onions are another thing. Anything in that aluminum family is actually great at reseeding. So once the season's kind of coming to an end, let them flower. They're going to put off a really cool looking flower, and that little pod that comes up, all of those are filled with seeds. So if you like seed saving or want to try that, onions, garlic, anything in that family is going to be great for that. It's super easy to find those seeds. They just kind of fall out when you shake that pot again. I'm going to jump into another. Yeah, this is actually slightly garlic. So it's not a typical garlic. You can eat it, but it's a pretty flower that you can intermix. Again, it's bug repellent, but you can put it in your landscaping, and it's real pretty. So another one we kind of brought up. With that, I'm going to talk about some other flowers. They're not necessarily veggie, but they're great companion plants. We've got marigolds. Marigolds are very much known as the companion plant to everything because they are bug repellent. One thing to keep in mind is your French marigolds are going to be the most bug repellent variety. There are many varieties of marigolds. So a lot of times people will just throw them all in there, and some varieties are going to be better than others. French is the most bug repellent, but things like African marigolds and things like that will help as well. Those African ones are the big tough ones. They're really cool. The other thing I'm going to talk about is calendula. Calendula is known as pot marigold. But this is an edible flower. You can put it in tea. It's great for your skin. So if you are someone who likes to use soaps and different things like that, this is great. There are many, many uses for calendula. Look at that flower. It's absolutely gorgeous. They're very prolific once you get them in. They're great for pots. That's the name, pot marigold. And again, completely edible, bug repellent flowers. Mix them in your garden. Pack it in there. Obviously, you don't want to get too tight, but yeah, intermixing is going to be very beneficial for natural bug repellent in your garden, which, as we know, aphids, thrips, things like that are very, very common. And so, with talking about things like that, I do want to go over. This might be a little out of order, but I'm going to go over things like Saranara and the Spinifex soap. These are both bug repelling or bug repellent. This one is organic. You can spray it on all your fruits and veggies. It's an organism that actually takes out the bugs and stuff, but it actually is antifungal as well in some ways. So it's a great product. Sayonara, hence the name. It's going to take care of those bugs. It's about as natural as you can get with still being a synthetic. Does come with a handy spray top that you can just twist and hook directly to your water hose, so it makes it super easy for you.
What was the name of the essence?
Fix that. Yeah, that's this one.
That's all that one. That one's also a phyticide. So anybody with houseplants, I just keep this. I have like 4 of them. You can use this on your veggies if you're organic gardening. This is an organic product that's found out in nature. But it kills mites. Mites are really hard to get rid of. A lot of things have really hard time getting down to. They're so small. Like if anyone's come here with a spider mite problem before, you've seen us put in the microscope to find them. Because you can't see it with the naked eye. If you have houseplants that keep living, you're like, what is this? Spider mites. This takes that out too.
All right, I'm going to pass that over to you.
Next, we're going to talk about strawberries. There's 3 main families of strawberries. There are June bearing, ever bearing, and day neutral. So your June bearing, they tend to produce the most fruit after a year in the ground. And they produce the biggest, juiciest, or like I want strawberries like in the store, I want your June berries. They produce one major crop, kind of like the tomatoes, the determinate ones. You have one period, you get all of them right now. It's called June bearing because there's usually a 2-week period sometime in June that you get your large crop. The ever-bearing variety of strawberries are kind of what it sounds like. They're going to continuously produce. They tend to do most of them in the spring and fall, but some have three peak seasons, but it continues through most of the season. A lot of the ever-bearing varieties have the more native ones. So we have one in the hanging basket. It's called the Alpine strawberry. It's kind of like you find out in nature. They're little itty bitty things, but that plant is like indestructible. I planted a few strawberry plants last year. I was the one that made it. It's just super easy. I barely taking care of it. I'm like, these are so small, I'm not even gonna water it, and it's done great. I'm like, all right, you can live. But if you want something to continuously produce something that's really low maintenance, the ever-bearing varieties are great. Day neutral, those tend to be smaller varieties too. Those have, I believe it's two crops in the year, spring and fall. And unlike the June bearing, those produce the first year, so you don't have to wait. So it's good to plant a few different varieties. So one, see what taste and size you like. But two, you get a continuous production, so you don't have to wait on your June bearings for next year. You can get them now. I will say with anything flowering, like the tomatoes, peppers, strawberry plants, you want to make sure they're loaded up on phosphorus, because if they don't have enough, phosphorus is your flower root food. They won't produce if they don't have enough in soil. This is fertilizer we made for the area for flowers. It's this blue powder that you mix in your watering can. You use it every 2 weeks during the flowering season for whatever you're using it on. You can use this on peach tree, your tomato plants. You can use this on your marigolds to get more flowers, potted things, or things in the ground. You want to make sure it's dissolved in the watering can before you apply it. This isn't one you just throw on top. It's very strong. The 3 numbers in there in your fertilizer. The middle one is your phosphorus, and 48. So 48% concentrated phosphorus. And it's like a Red Bull for flowers. It's like, go, give me flowers. That's this stuff. So every 2 weeks, throw that in water.
She's talking about that. I'm going to talk about the fruit and veggie fertilizer that we have down here. We like to call fertilizer like this, or our all-purpose 744. That's your meat and potatoes. That's your daily meal. That's your morning coffee. So kind of a two-part thing. This you're going to apply about every 45 days to any of your fruits and vegetables. This is a 6447. That 7 is your added calcium. So you're getting a continual application in your veggie garden. Again, that's going to help out with your tomatoes, your peppers, your squash, basically all fruit development. It's going to help with your fruit trees as well, and it's going to make them taste better. That calcium actually helps things not be bitter. So it's another thing to keep in mind. This is specifically for that. It is pet safe. So if your pets get into it, they might tell them if they ate the whole bag, but it's not poisonous to pets. Just keep that another thing to keep in mind. It is also organic.
And when's the best time to use that?
I would say the first application I would do when you're laying out your bed, when you're doing your soils, and your mulches, all that stuff, and then every 45 days through the entire growing season.
You mix it in with the soil.
Yeah, you mix it in with the soil, you sprinkle it in, water it down. And then I would recommend for your fruit trees and things like that, taking a break during the winter, because you don't want to be telling them to flower. You want them to go to sleep for the winter, to store up that energy to prepare for the next season. So you do take a break through the winter, but otherwise you can use this through the entire growing season. The next thing I do want to jump into is pets. We talked about this being pet safe. There are also pet plants that we've got here. We've got catnip, we've got cat grass, and we've got cat mint. So a few different things. The catnip is part of the mint family, so it is going to be animal resistant to your other things like your rabbits and stuff like that. But it's also a beautiful flower. It's purple. It's bug repellent. So my favorite property, bug repellent things. The catnip and the cat mint are part of the mint family. How you know that is they actually have a little bit of a square stem. So that's going to be your key teller for looking for things in the mint family. You can feel that and pass that around.
I'll pass this.
That's how you recognize that. So yeah, these are all great. All of these you can actually use for yourself as well. Catnip actually has the opposite effect on humans as it does on cats. Makes cats crazy, but it's calming, like chamomile for humans. So you can put it in tea and things like that. So I'm going to pass it back over to Rio while you guys are passing those around and checking those out.
Next thing we're going to talk about is some of the vining fruiting plants. Raspberries and blackberries are super easy. You probably heard about blueberries. They're like, I want super low pH, capacity between 4.5 and 5.5. You have to baby them, check the flowers in winter. Raspberries and blackberries, you can kind of chuck these in ground with a little mulch and they'll just grow. You don't need to be like exact pH and this and that. These are super easy. So we've got a big variety. They're currently outside while we've got the class going, but we'll open up the walls for anyone to see them after the class. So raspberries are super easy. You want to make sure you trellis them. They're pretty low water once they're established. You just want to make sure you water them twice a week in the ground until they get there. The other plant I want to talk about is chocolate vine. Most people don't think about chocolate vines as edible, but they actually make a little purple fruit that you can eat. And the flowers smell great. They kind of smell like chocolate. I think this will get a little damaged by pass around, but you guys are welcome to come up after class and smell them. They're called a chocolate vine because these little white flowers actually kind of smell like chocolate. Kind of. It's a great sweet smell though. I'll kind of show the camera those flowers. But these are great vine plants. They just smell good, taste good, and super fun.
I'm going to go back in, talk about a few other plants. We touched on your catnip and things like that being good for tea. A few other things that I like because I grew a tea garden. I like to drink tea, so why not? you're planting a veggie garden, why not plant some herbs that we call it? Most of them are perennial. Some of them like the mint, can be evergreen depending on where you're at and how protected they are. But things like mint, chamomile, lemon balm, and stevia in your tea. So you can have a whole tea garden. Later in the season, we'll have things like echinacea and stuff like that. So medicinal tea, a lot of these can take your full sun. I will preface that anything in that mint family, like your lemon balm, your catmint, you do want to, those are really good for containers as they do spread. And they can spread like wildfire, especially your mint. It can actually become kind of annoying. It's almost invasive. But, you know, why not have that over the weeds? You know, who wants tumbleweeds when you can make your yard? It's not cookie. So, keeping that in mind, mint, anything in the mint family feels like a little bit more moisture than some of your other plants, like your rosemary and things like that. So keeping those a little bit more separate in a container is ideal. But they can handle the full sun if they have the right amount of moisture. And then things like stevia. You can sweeten your tea and grow your tea. So that's kind of fun. This is called the sugar plant. It is a little bit more tender, so I would give this a little bit more protection from the cold and the afternoon blazing sun. I'll pass that back over to you.
All right. Then I want to talk about bugs. Bugs are a pretty major issue here. We've already talked about sayonara and it's been said, but I'll give you guys one more time. Well, two other things like that. So sayonara, the main benefit with this big empty bottle too, since you can hook it up to your hose, if you have big fruit trees and things like that in your garden, and you can't really reach it with your little hand sprayer, this will go up to like, I think it's 20, 30 feet. So you can just turn it and really blast up there. I have a pine tree in my yard that's like 30 feet tall, got aphids last year. This can get up there. It's crazy. And it mixes for you. So you don't have to get a product and then mix your concentrate with water and be like, what's my ratio? Now you have to label your bottles. You can just get something that mixes for you. Then finish out here and talk about, again, organic gardening. This stuff is great. Anything you're spraying on something you're going to eat, though, even if it's organic stuff, you want to wash it. It's going to taste like spinach dad soap or whatever if you don't wash it anyway. So as much as it's organic and you can eat it without it killing you, you still want to taste it. So just wash your fruits and vegetables, everybody. Diatomaceous earth. This stuff is great for anything with an exoskeleton. So I used to, growing up, we didn't really have much of a garden, but we used to put this around the house to keep bugs out of the house as like a perimeter. This is our organic product too. So this is made out of ground fossils. And how it works is it kind of gets into the scales or the shell of things with that exoskeleton and kind of dries out. This is food safe, pet safe. I put it in my chicken feed to keep bugs out of their feed so they don't hit bugs. So you can do all kinds of different stuff with this. It's a good thing to have in the garden to keep beetles out because that's what's going to give you grubs. If you've ever had grubs before, they're little fat, seed-shaped worms. They will eat the roots off anything. They'll kill trees here. And beetles lay the larvae. So it doesn't kill grubs when you have them, but it can kill the beetles that come in to lay their babies basically in your garden to kill it. So diatomaceous earth is a great product. One other thing for people who are super organic, this is really cool. So these are praying mantis eggs. It's in this little sack here. There's a couple hundred little eggs in there. If you ever done these before, basically how you do use this is you leave this in a sunny window to hatch. Once you start seeing them come out, you immediately take it outside and let them free. You don't want to keep them in a consolidated container. Once they hatch, they'll actually start eating each other. They're voracious predators. They will eat anything and everything. You've got spiders, you've got beetles, you've got gnats, you've got flies. They will eat anything. Aphids. Yeah, so basically nature's predator for bugs. Get some praying mantis, put them in your yard. We like praying mantis. It's cool to like go pick them up and play with them and they're like, don't catch me. But these are great. So any kind of organic gardening you're on board with. So yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Do they continually live on, or do they have a season and die?
So the question was, do praying mantis have a continuous life, or do they go through the season and They will stay around as long as they're alive. So they can live in your yard for years. They are predatory and they like territory. So they will probably take out most of them when they get to a certain size. The other ones will leave. You'll probably see one or two. They're very hard to see, especially when they're small. They're about that big and as thin as a chemical head. So you probably won't see them much the first year, but they'll be there eating. They're very hungry. So they stay basically as long as they can stay alive in your yard.
Question back there?
Yeah.
How many times a year?
So the question was how often throughout the year to apply diatomaceous earth. I apply it, and then when it rains enough that I can't see it anymore, I apply it again. If you can see it, it's making a good barrier. That's how I base it. I'm sure there's more scientific ways to do it, but that's my chaotic gardening system. Any other questions about bugs?
I did want to jump in.
Oh, one more. Tomato hornworms, yes. So hornworms, actually most of what we see, I learned this last night, are tobacco hornworms. We also get tomato hornworms. They look very similar. They're very big. They're probably thicker and about as long as a finger. They are giant, bright green caterpillars that come from a moth, and they will decimate tomato plants. They will occasionally go after some of the other nightshades like your peppers and your eggplants, but mostly tomato plants. And there's a couple different ways to deal with them. You can spray them, you can pick them off the plant and step on it, you can feed them to your chickens like I do. So there's a couple different ways to get rid of them, but you want to kind of periodically through the season check your tomato plants to make sure nothing's on it. You can spray spinosad and things just so you have a little bit of barrier continuously every once in a while. But it's kind of they're so big, when they're there, and you just want to kill them whatever way your preference is. So for spinosad soap, the application, you just spray the plant. If you spray the dirt, it's probably not going to do too much because there's so much wind blowing, moisture, and water things. So you just spray the plant and the bugs. Most insecticides are topical where you applicate the bugs themselves. Neem oil is another popular one most of you have probably heard about. We do have it down below. I didn't bring it up. We do have neem oil. Neem oil works a little differently than cyanide and spinosad. These are contact killers. So when a bug touches the product, it dies. Neem oil works. Any of the oil-based products for fungicides, insecticides, miticides have to smother. So you have to be a lot more heavy-handed with your neem oils. And how it works is basically smothering the whole bug and dies by being stuck in water or by drying out or this and that. So it's not as easy. And I will say with insecticides, if you notice you have a bad aphid problem, thrip problem, it's another, they're also called no-see-ums, really bad here. You want to make sure, what was I saying? Oh yeah, that too, but I remember what I was going to say. You want to make sure you apply once and you apply about 10 days later, so a week and a half, to hit that second wave. So if they laid in the egg, you hit that second wave. So if you just spray once, you're like, I'm good. And then you'd be like, why is it so bad? You probably have eggs still. So you want to make sure you have 2 applications. And then Michaela brought up a good point. So whenever you're using bug killers, a lot of the stuff.
Any spray in general is just trying to get this spray.
Yeah, you don't want moisture and droplets on your leaves or basically any of your plants during the heat of the day, so in the afternoon sun. What it does is water droplets, especially oil-based, if you're using neem oil especially, it acts as a magnifying glass with the sun and will burn your plants. So if you're using any kind of spray topically on your leaves, you want to make sure you do it early morning or afternoon. The other benefit of doing it at those times is you won't hit your bees and butterflies. Most of the pests that we get on plants, like aphids and thrips, live on the plant. So you can spray it at any time of day and hit them. Ladybugs, bees, butterflies, other things like that don't live on your plants. They go back home. They have their own hives and wherever else they live. But they leave. So that way you keep your beneficial insects and kill the ones you don't want around. Did you still have a question?
You kind of answered it. I was curious about these insecticides with butterfly bees and things like that. What are they going to do with that?
Yeah, so the question is basically kind of what I was already talking on. What will these sprays do to the beneficial pollinators? The answer is most of them will kill them. So if you're spraying it, when the bees are already out, you see them flying around, you spray it, you're going to kill your bees too. So if you want to keep your bees and butterflies, you want to make sure you spray super early or really late, kind of right before, during the sunrise and sunset are a good time where you can still see, but the good bugs leave, so you don't kill them. Go ahead.
What do you suggest for ants?
Ants. There's a couple different things you can do for ants. I will say if you see ants on your plants, ants don't eat like tomatoes and trees. Usually if you see ants on the plants themselves, they're there because of aphids. So aphids are these little bugs that actually have a mouth that kind of pokes into the plant and takes the sap out, and then they poop it back out. They call it aphid dew to be polite, but it's aphid poop. It's really sticky and shiny. So if you see, underneath a big tree or somebody parks their car and you're like, what's that shiny stuff all around? Or your leaves, they're like, what's this sticky stuff? It's aphid dew. And the ants actually will crawl up trees and other plants to eat that dew because it's basically sap that's been digested and spit out for them. So they come when the aphids come to eat that dew. They're usually not there for any other reason on the trees themselves. Now, if the ants are bothering you or sticking you in the feet while you're in the garden just because they have a hole around, there are products for that. There's a couple different ones in the store. One good one is, I don't remember what it's called, I can't remember, but it's basically a little trap you make that you put a little sweet sticky stuff on, and they take it back to their, not hive, hill. They take it in there and actually kill the group of the ants under the ground. So if you just kill one, if you use a spray or something, it's going to kill that one, and the rest of the hive is going to come back and give back all over.
One thing I did want to circle back to is watering. She's talking about spraying at different times of the day. You do want to make sure you're watering in the morning. Watering in the morning is going to feed your plant for the day. It's going to suck it up so it has that moisture for the heat of the day. If you're watering in the evening, it's actually going to lead to fungal issues and things like that. It's not being sucked up at night, and it sits longer. So you're going to have more problems like powdery mildew and things like that. Talking about things like that, I'm going to bring up fungicide 5. It's one of our most popular products here. It's organic. And it helps take care of those fungal issues. So if you're seeing that powdery mildew, it looks like literally just looks like white spots on the top of your leaves, or you're seeing black spots that are kind of getting slimy or gross, that's a fungus. That's a sign that things are staying too wet. And so you want to use something like this to clear that up, and then just space out watering a little bit. You don't have to water quite as much as you think you do, but watering in the morning is going to help mitigate a lot of that. This is also a preventative measure. So you can use this when you're first planting. You mix it in with your watering solution with things like your root and growth to help with your transplant shock. This is going to help prevent even having those problems arise in the first place. So really great product. It does come in a concentrate. It also does come in a spray. So if you only have 2 plants, go with the spray. If you have a lot of plants or you do a lot of transplanting, I recommend this. You can just mix it directly into your watering can or in a spray bottle.
Question. So the question was about blister beetles. Blister beetles are terrible. There's a bunch of different colors. The main one I ended up seeing here are red and black. Blister beetles are called that because if one gets on you and smacks it on the skin, it causes a blister. You actually get welts. One guy came in one year, he smacked his neck and he had a giant sore on his neck from the blister beetle. They are terrible. They will come through in waves and just decimate your plants and then leave within like days. Blister beetles, all you can do is you can spray. So I can get as far away as you can and crank it. That's what I do with blister beetles. They're a pain in like every way, shape, and form. So you see blister beetles, hit it with this. Yeah. Yeah. So the question was, questions, can you spread this on animals without making it toxic? The answer is yes. This is fruit and veggie safe. Again, you want to wash it just so you don't taste it, but this is safe for animals, fruits, veggies. If you get some on your lettuce, then you go pick your lettuce and just wash it. It's totally fine. It's safe. It's safe for humans and animals and stuff too. I will say just caution thing, like if your dog goes out, you got some on the ground, I just let it dry first, and then let your pet out afterwards, just so they're not getting whiffs of it.
And that's a good rule with pretty much any spray or fertilizer. Water it in, keep your heads off that area until it's dry. It becomes way less reactive when it's dry. And they're not going to go after it because the smell is kind of dissipated after it's dry. A couple more things I wanted to talk about real quick. Lavender. We didn't touch base on that. We have our lavender lemonade. There are a few different types of lavender. You'll see this one here. We do have all three throughout the season. You'll have Spanish lavender, you'll have French lavender, and you'll have English lavender. They're all pretty cold hardy. They're all pretty drought tolerant. Your English lavender is going to be your most cold tolerant. That's the one with the long thin stems and the little, almost like a beaded flower on top. So they do look different. You'll see the Spanish lavender actually comes in a white variety as well. So a few different varieties. They're a great, beautiful plant. Again, very drought tolerant. So they're a great companion plant, but you do want to keep in mind you don't necessarily want to put it in with things that you're watering every single day. One of the other things I did want to mention is things like sage and curry. We have a lot of herbs. We don't necessarily have time to go over all of them today, but we do carry different things for your flavors. You can see that's a curry one there. We've got things like your sage here. This one's a tricolor. We get pineapple sage. We get purple sage. We get your regular green sage that you can put in with your soups and stews, things like that. With speaking about that, you have your bay laurel. This is borderline perennial here. So if you do protect it during the winter, it will come back year after year. So I recommend this one in a pot. It does turn into a beautiful little bush. You can use those in your soups and stews. They're great.
We got a couple minutes left, so does anybody have any questions? So thank you for. So the question was, are we doing any classes on roses, pruning, lavender, things like that? Do we have any classes for that, Jody? Or did we done the season?
I think we have.
Yep. Last one.
Give me a minute. I'll get back to you.
We'll check. We'll come back.
Come back to you. Question over here.
Yeah, but if you ever have questions like that, like I can just explain how to grow it, you just create a picture of it and come in and we'll walk you through it.
We also have pruning guides on our website, as well as all of our previous classes you can watch on our YouTube. You live stream them. You just go to that live tab when you get to our profile on YouTube.
The last one is top 10 flowers for hummingbirds.
So the last class we'll do will be next Saturday, 9:30 to 10:30 same time, and we're doing pollinator plants. So like a top 10 for pollinators. So roses will probably be included, so you can ask more of those questions next time. But we'll be here after, so if you have still have questions on it.
Did have one other quick mention before we get to our next question. Is a frost ball. So if you are planting out now, you are getting blooms. Using something like a frost ball, anything that really gets below 28 degrees is your hard freeze. So using something like this will just protect that from really zapping your blooms, which are what produces your fruit, or produces your veggies or your flowers. So using something like this is just going to help save those through the colder times. You had a question?
So how do you manage overwatering during the monsoon season?
That's a hard one. So, with your, I'm going to start with raised beds because those are the most often where it hits hardest. Making sure that you have a good foundation of like topsoil. Topsoil has a sandy layer, so it's going to really help with your drainage. If you've got pots, making sure they have a drainage hole is super important. Because yes, you can drown out your things. checking your hole for drainage when you go to plant, super important. We have tons of clay in our area. So if you have a lot of clay, using things like fast acting gypsum, it's gonna help break up that soil and have a better drainage to kind of mitigate those risks. Also applying things like the aqua boost and stuff that we talked about, that's gonna absorb your excess moisture and slow release as it dries out. So it takes out some of that extra to, again, kind of mitigate that.
Make a split every year.
So that split is that wild change. So that's where that aqua boost or the bullets are really going to help manage that. And then just being consistent with your own watering is going to prepare it for that. Because when it's got a consistent water level, it can manage it better itself. Yeah.
What was your question?
Do you have any kind of guide for the end? I know there's some plants that should connect with each other.
So we don't have one.
We do, kind of. So my question is, do we have a guide on companion planting? We kind of do. On our website, we have a calendar, and each month, on that calendar on the website, we'll talk about companion plants for the month. The stuff in bloom, stuff to plant together. We have a list back there.
There's also another really good list on the Farmer's Almanac website. You just type in companion planting. It'll be one of the very first websites that pops up. So if you scroll down to the bottom, it has a whole chart for that. It'll also tell you what not to put together. That was a really good resource for me when I was doing some homework on these things.
Hey, Michaela,
Yes.
I really like watersgardencenter.com. It's a great resource for garden information as well. You all need to kind of, I need my parking lot there. Jam.
Okay.
Did the sign-in sheet go around?
I think it did. If you have the sign-in sheet, we do have a few more people that didn't get it, so we're gonna pass that forward. She's got it here. We did have one last question over here.
Anything special for the established raised bed for nice again, not the same?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. He's talking about replanting your raised bed the following year. One thing I always recommend, whether it's in the ground or in a pot, is rotating your crops. If you planted something there one season, plant something different there the next season. That's going to take up different nutrients. Also, topping off your beds early in the season before you plant. That would be like early March. You're putting in things like manure, mulch, and just topping off with your regular potting soil. That's going to add those nutrients back in. It's going to help break up those soils, keep it from compacting. You can add things like vermiculite and perlite to help loosen that up as well. But if you're rotating your crops regularly, like your root vegetables and things like that, it's really going to break up the soil for you. It's going to mitigate the amount of work that you have to do personally. So just keep those things in mind. So with that, we're going to close it out. But if you guys have more questions, we'll be here to answer them.
It's just a suggestion.
Yeah.
On the greenhorn worms, if you don't see them during the day, get a black light, and at night they glow, and you can get
Yeah,
them.
because they use the black light to find your hornworms after dusk.
It's 25 cents a worm.